Hey, everybody. How's it going? I hope you're having a great day. As many of you know, we've raised over $800,000 to do right to repair lobbying over the past about 8 months, thanks to all of you. And one of the things that I've done is partner with a group called Public Interest Research Group to help us with this. As you may know on this channel, there is a common channel meme called the Getting Eugened. It's where you pay a contractor to do something and they never wind up actually doing it. And I have this curse where for the past 13 years, I've always managed to choose the wrong contractor for a job. And that's something I wanted to make sure we didn't do here. It is actually very easy to pay a lobbyist a large amount of money and have them not actually do much other than make, one or two gestures like, hey, or how's it going in the hall, and bill you for that time that they did that. Now, the Public Interest Research Group has a lot of interest in a lot of different types of legislation, whether, it's like stuff like clean water initiatives, let's not have poisonous chemicals in kids' toys and stuff like that. So they have a lot of experience lobbying at the legislative level, both themselves and also engaging other parties to do so. And they have suggested a number of different lobbyists in a number of different states. They also have boots on the ground in these states so that they're able to hold people's feet to the fire and ensure that they're doing what they're supposed to. And I wanted to introduce you to some of those in the states that we're lobbying in today. So today we are here with Emily Scarr of Maryland Public Interest Research Group. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
So the first question I have is most of my audience is sorry, my cat's actually trying to eat my food. Most of my audience likely thinks that lobbying is a guy walks into a politician's office with, a large stick in one hand, a bag of money in the other, and says, do what I say. And at the level that we're at, where many of the lobbyists we're hiring are a few thousand a month here or there, that's obviously not enough money to really do anything. So what is it that a lobbyist actually does when you hire a firm to try and advocate on your behalf for a piece of legislation?
Sure. Well, there are different types of lobbyists. So I'm a registered lobbyist in the state. I'm not hired by third parties. I work for Maryland PIRG, but I register as a lobbyist. I set up meetings. I leverage the support of our members and the public on the issues we care about. And then there's also contract lobbyists. Those are the folks that are hired guns. They work for not necessarily anybody, but folks who have money who want to work with them. And then third, there are corporate lobbyists who work for a specific corporation or interest to lobby on their behalf, which is more similar to what I do, but obviously different because they care about their shareholders and I care about the public. I don't know if that answers your question, but what the lobbyists you hired guns, you're really hiring them for their skills and persuasion, but also their relationships and access, since they spend their whole career building relationships with these legislators.
So yeah, one of the things that I have just noticed more and more as I read through these reports each month from all the different states is I can't give specific details because if I do, it's kind of like it ruins what's going on. But you'll see things like this person in this state may think this is a good idea, but the person co-sponsoring it is somebody they don't like, so they don't want to go ahead with it. Or they want to do it, but they don't want to do it if it looks like somebody else is already doing it. And it really, like the best way that I could put it is it just seems like high school on steroids to a great degree. Can you explain how you move past some of these challenges? So for instance, if you have one legislative body that actually, or legislator thinks this is a great idea, but I think that somebody on the federal level is already doing something, when in reality, the federal level is probably going to take 20 or 30 years to do something. How have you gotten past that in prior campaigns where they say?
There's a couple different dynamics you mentioned there. I think one of the most clear ones is political. They are politicians. So for example, right now in Maryland, it's an election year. So there can be a lot of times where your work is derailed by things that have nothing to do with your bill. Someone is running against your friend or up for re-election, and you don't want to help them out. So our job is to spend as much time as possible removing the politics and making it just an issue, making sure that the public's voice is heard, making sure it is out there in the media and on the public's mind so they can't get away with it just being muddied by the political situation. So that's one of the reasons it's important to have boots on the ground, but not spending all of your time just lobbying. You have to be out there building the public support, building the coalitions, getting the community leaders speaking up for your bill, because then it makes it hard for them to be lost in political messiness.
How do you deal with particular situations where they may say, we think this is being addressed at the federal level, so we're not going to touch it, when you know that the federal level is something that's not going to happen with just due to Washington for 10 or 20 or 30 years? Like, how do you deal with that perception that this is something somebody else should be dealing with, not you?
I think in a couple ways. One, I think most legislators, at least in Maryland at this point, know that the federal government is unfortunately in a stalemate. And when we have been able to get the federal government to act, even before the stalemate, it generally took states pushing them forward, right? States are the laboratory of democracy. That's what we've already said. And so being one of the states to take action is usually required in order to push the federal government to finally take action. So for example, in Maryland, we were one of the first states to ban this toxic chemical, DECA, BDE, which you probably never heard of. And then a number of other states did it, and the federal government took action. So similar to a couple corporations taking voluntary action, making it easier for us to pass legislation, telling legislators, you're right, the federal government should act. And by you doing this, it's going to help tip the scales to give them the support and pressure they need to do so.
Interesting. Yeah, because something that we've heard for a very long time is this is something, has the federal government done anything? And now we finally got to I don't know if the attorney general has said anything about this. I don't want to do something that's going to be preempted by federal law. And now that Biden finally signed that executive order that asked the FTC to do something, now states are saying, instead of saying, we think we're going to get spanked by the federal government if we do something, they're saying, well, we don't think we should do anything because they're going to do something. But that list is filled with there's so much stuff on that list that right to repair is going to be, I'm sure they'll get to it, as a whole. I don't know if you were following what happened in Hawaii, where they said, we will review this legislation and get back to you in 2050. But they wound up actually writing that. Now, let's see.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good signal from the Biden administration. They want the states to do something, right? The FTC process takes a long time. But one thing we know, whether it's good or bad, executive orders or decisions by the administration or their departments are somewhat binding, but in order to actually have right to repair, we need legislative action. So we need Congress to act. And so while we might have a favorable administration or FTC right now who wants to support it, long term, we need Congress to act. And so regardless if Biden administration is doing something or his FTC is, we need legislation in Congress, and they are not teed up to pass something right now, I don't think.
How do you deal with situations where you have a coalition member that has supported you publicly and openly in the past for several years, that where their support completely disappears 1 year for political reasons? Not naming anybody.
Right. I think it's all of this is personal relationships, right? So that's one thing. Someone who works on multiple issues, and I want to make a difference long term. You want to maintain those relationships for the long term. So I care way more about maintaining a trusted relationship with someone than one fight. So if I had a coalition partner who decided not to do something for political reasons, I would respect that. Everyone, as a nonprofit organizer or other things, you have to think about politics. You have to think about your power in the state and your relationships long term. So while I might privately talk to someone and figure out why they're doing it, I accept that I can't have everyone on my team all the time, whether it's for political reasons or capacity reasons. I try to be a team player that way.
When you say that it's important to have boots in the ground to get support in a particular area, building coalition partners, can you talk a little bit about what that's about? Because for me, what I've done is, again, I just sit in my chair and yell about repair, and then I show up at these legislative hearings and meet people that have watched my videos. But and I've spoken to lobbyists and heard what they do, which is they'll speak to everybody there, figure out who likes each other, who doesn't like each other, why, and try to get them all to sit together at the lunchroom table in high school and hash something out. Well, can you just explain a little bit of the process of what it's like getting coalition partners? What does boots on the ground mean in more detail for those who may not understand what PIRG does?
Yeah, so the strategy you implement to pull those boots, or which boots, depends a little bit on your campaign, but I can talk about right to repair specifically. There are a couple, we look at our targets, who is it in the legislature that we need to move? Sometimes, you have a couple swing votes. Sometimes you're targeting the legislative leadership. And then you figure out, okay, who are the folks who can persuade them? Sometimes it's a really specific science. Sometimes it's more general. For right to repairs, our key spokesmen that we know, I think, will be most helpful are folks in the education sphere, right? A lot of our Baltimore City legislators and leadership really care about equity issues. So the digital gap and the ability for public school students and others have access to affordable laptops in their schools to have affordable laptops makes a difference. So that's one of the constituencies I've been working to elevate in the campaign by reaching out to teachers, techs in schools, students who are interested in repair about why this is important for their ability to get an education and a good opportunity for them as careers too, to be repair techs in small businesses. And that's sort of a second constituency, obviously, is the repair techs are hugely good spokespeople. They can explain the technical aspects of it, but also the small business aspects and why this is so important for communities to have viable small businesses in their communities to provide access for repair. So we'll then target those constituencies based on specific geographic districts, legislative districts where we think we need that support even more. Finding repair shops in those districts or teachers in those districts is useful for lobbying, but also for media work to elevate the issue in those specific places where we know we need those legislators to have our back. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, completely. Thank you so much. You know your stuff. Now, the most common question that I have always gotten is, what can an average, ordinary person do to help move this forward? And one of the things I've said, admittedly, which may not be in my own self-interest, is it's not about giving me money. It's get someone who is in your life to help them fix something, help them make money fixing something, or help them see the joy in fixing something. They'll spread that to other people. And once that spreads to enough people, it's going to be really hard for companies to take part in practices that take that away from you. But in a more immediate sense, not in the term of a long-term cultural change, in the more immediate sense, what is it that your average ordinary person sitting on their couch watching this YouTube video could do to help move things along in their state or in yours?
Yeah, a couple simple things. One is to actually call your legislators. Folks hear about their congressmen all the time, but I don't know how much people pay attention to their state legislators. Go online, find your state senator, state representative, or delegate, and give their office a call and let them know you care about this. See if they have a bill, see if they'd be interested in supporting a bill, ask where they stand. You can also write to the media. So letters to the editor is basically like a Facebook post or a Twitter post, a little bit longer, 50 words, 100 words to your local paper, calling for legislation for right to repair. Those are two pretty simple things that can make a big difference. And I do think donating to groups, donating to you, donating to us, that helps professional advocates do this work.
How do you overcome your average person's cynicism when they say, the time it takes for me to even Google or figure out my legislator's phone number is pointless because they're not going to listen to me. It's going to go to a voicemail they throw away. Like most people that I speak to, when they say, what can I do? When I tell them what to do, I give them the non-legislative answer, because when I give them the legislative answer, I can just see the look in their eye. They're never going to do it because they have this intense sense of cynicism that my legislators don't care about me. They're not going to do anything. How do you overcome that cynicism when dealing with all different types of people that you want to engage politically for change?
Give it a try. I do know that legislators pay attention to those calls. They tally them. That is why we have a bill in Maryland. It wasn't us doing this. I had multiple legislators come to us years ago saying, you guys work on right to repair. I want to put a bill on that. And the reason was because they were getting phone calls. So phone calls matter. Emails a little bit less, for sure. Make a phone call. But they do make a difference. So I'd say just spend the 5 minutes. It doesn't cost you a thing. Sometimes calling your congressman, I agree, it can feel defeating, but they make tallies. They do pay attention. It's worth the time. The things you're saying are also worth your time. I think that's what's helped make right to repair such a big issue, is this groundswell of support that has come from people doing not necessarily political actions, but just community actions and elevating the need for repair in their own lives.
What are the methods that you use to gauge whether or not a lobbyist is a good lobbyist? And then once you've retained that lobbyist that you trust, how do you tell whether or not they're actually doing their job, rather than just, saying, hey, how's it going in the hallway, and then billing you $5,000 or $10,000 a month?
I don't have the opportunity to hire my own lobbyist a lot. I just do my own work, but I get to work with a lot of them, and I've had, coalition partners work with them, or I just happen to work with them. And it's similar. It's a personal relationship, right? So I do think having someone on the ground, working with them hand on hand, can be very helpful. And just knowing what you're getting, right? I've had folks hire a lobbyist because that lobbyist has the right relationship with the chair of the committee and can get it through. So I think just being really clear with your lobbyist too. I don't have enough experience to know, but just keep knowing what you're getting and what to expect. Their job is to make you happy. They want to please their clients. They don't want a bad reputation. But long term, their job is to have access and relationships with legislators. So they're only probably going to go so far. So just like me, I'm not going to burn my relationship on one issue, and neither will they. So just having the right expectations of what they are able to do and can do for you, I think, is important. Seeing who their other clients are. It depends on how much you care, but that will tell you a little bit about them and how they generally operate, what type of interest they're used to representing. If that was a little too vague. happy to clarify.
No, that's great. And this is what I really appreciate about being able to know people like you and Nathan Proctor and everybody else at US PERG, because you have PERGs in, for those who are late to this, public interest research groups in, over a dozen states. So, for me, having to keep on top of what people are doing in 6 different states and be able to prove and verify that they're actually doing their job is something that would be close to impossible to do properly without groups in each of these states that's dedicated to doing that. And thank you so much for being willing to work with us. And that's really about it. Is there anything else that you want to say at the end of this?
No, I just really appreciate your support and all you've done to help make this a groundswell of support. It really does have some wind in our wings. And I agree, it's not easy to have national efforts to try to help in the states. And I think you're doing a really good job of helping make our work more effective this year. So I appreciate your support.
Thank you so much for taking the time. You have a nice day.
Take care.
Bye-bye.